Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sound Stewardship's webinar on navigating travel with financial confidence. I'm your host, Derek Hensley, a wealth advisor at the firm. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker, Karen Harrison. Karen grew up in Ireland and came to the U.S. for college, where she met her husband, Jonathan Harrison, my colleague and partner of the firm. They have 3 teenagers, and Karen has loved planning trips for her family and friends, and now she's working with the Striker Travel Group to help others plan fun vacations to Disney, Universal, Ireland, Europe, and beyond. So Karen, we're so happy to have you on our webinar today to share a lot of helpful tips and tricks around this fun topic of travel. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and welcome to everybody. We picked a very good week to have a webinar about travel because we all just want to leave Kansas City. I want to leave Kansas City. I want to feel my toes.
Right, right.
So, like Derek said, I grew up in Ireland and spent my childhood basically visiting the beach, visiting mountains, castles, the city. Pretty much everything that you want in a country was within about an hour of where I lived. So we didn't really have to go anywhere. We didn't really have to travel to different countries. So everything we needed was pretty much right there, except hot weather.
Yeah.
That was the one thing we didn't have, but we're all pale. So that's okay. We'd sunburn in 2 seconds. So we grew up there, and the only place that I really wanted to go when I was a kid was Disney. I saw an ad for it on telly, and I was just like, that is the place I want to go. And if I was to imagine what America looked like when I was a kid, it was like a country, and right in the middle of that country was Disney. And everybody just lived around Disney, and everybody just went to Disney, and it was like the best place ever. And then I had a pen pal from Alabama, and she told me she'd never been. And I was like, what do you mean? You live right there. How could you not go there? And so that was like a shock to me. And it is a shock to everybody from, I think, from Europe, a European country, to see how big America is. We just don't know. And I have this funny picture of, this is basically my family. If they had to pick, oh, hang on a minute, make sure this, oh, there it goes. This is how the rest of the world sees America. I'm not even joking. We have New York, Disney, cowboys, Los Angeles, and then we live in what? And I look outside and I'm like, what? Where do I live? Why do I live here? Look at this weather. So that's where we live right now. We live in what? And we're going to talk about leaving what? Going to fun places.
Right. That sounds great. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about the best ways to do that financially. How can we plan trips? How can we go see the places we want to see with a plan, making sure that we are financially ready to go somewhere? And obviously, because we are in a financial planning webinar, the first thing we're going to talk about is a budget. Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously, when you have a budget, you're thinking about the big things. You're thinking about your flights and where to stay. And when I first started planning for my family, that was basically the extent of what I thought my budget should be: getting there and staying there. But really, especially when you're traveling abroad, you have a lot more things to think about. And I think the more that you prepare for all the little things, the more relaxing your trip is going to be, because your head is not going to have this constant tally of like, I wasn't expecting this, I wasn't expecting this. And so kind of, you want to consider everything that you're going to spend and then put that together. And my family will tell you that there are 2 versions of Karen. There's the Karen that stays home, and she is a budget freak. And then there's Karen on holidays, and she says yes to everything. And the reason I can say yes to everything while I'm on holiday is because I have already thought of that before I left. And so I can say yes because I have planned for that before I left. But if I didn't do that, I'd be stressed out the whole time. Like, well, I didn't plan for this. And you have to plan if you have teenagers who want to go to Starbucks, because they'll spend your entire budget immediately.
Right.
So here's some things to consider when you're planning that budget. First, obviously, your flights, okay? So how we're going to get there. And then when you're getting there, how are you getting around? Are you going to use a rental car? Then you're going to need your insurance for that car, and you're going to need gas or petrol, as we would call it in Ireland, and that is very expensive where you're going. So take the time, look up how much that's going to cost, and how much are you going to be driving, and consider that. Are you taking Ubers or trains, public transportation? You're going to want to know generally what that's going to cost you. Obviously, you have your hotels or your Airbnbs or where you're going to stay. And then you'll start considering kind of going smaller, your meals, and also like those snacks that you're going to want to buy. I mean, just picture what would your meal budget be and then add a bunch for those like things that you, especially if you're going to like Disney where a snack costs the price of a meal. So
Right.
think about stuff like that. Your experiences and your excursions. Think about how much you're wanting to spend on those. And then the other thing that I try to consider is what will I need before I leave? And I'm going to put that as part of my package. So my luggage, my clothing, if I'm going somewhere warm, or if you're going somewhere extra cold, skiing, do you need gear? You're going to need adapters if you're going abroad for your phones, for your electronics, and then consider all the paperwork you're going to need. So do you need a passport? Do you need a visa? Do you want to skip the lines and maybe go for some global entry or TSA pre-check? All of those things kind of, I'm an Excel sheet, I love using those. So put all that in a sheet, give yourself a budget. And then when you're on vacation, like you are relaxed, you are ready to chill because you have planned for all of those things.
Yeah.
And so
then one question on, on some of these things, it's planning ahead, but what can you do like for passports and global entry? Like how far out do you need to like, oh, if I don't have that, or if I want to change something in this area, like how far out should we be planning around those get those changes in place?
Yeah. That's a great question. So passports right now are actually moving the fastest they've been since COVID. So you're looking pretty good on that. It's about 13 weeks, I think, right now.
Okay.
And you can get them expedited, but I would kind of think, 3 months out, maybe at the latest to get that passport in. But so plan ahead for that. Global entry takes quite a bit longer because there's background checks. I just saw an Instagram post where it was a single girl saying, this is how I'm going to find a guy. I'm going to stand at the airport looking for men coming through global entry because the US government has already done half the work for me. I was like, that's
smart.
So yeah. So that is so varied. So my family has applied for global entry. My kids heard back probably 2 weeks. It was very quick. I still haven't heard back from mine. So they all got to go skip the lines on our recent trip to Ireland. And I was just like,
I'm from Ireland. How's this? Yeah.
I know. Well, so global entry is actually for coming back in to skip US customs.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So I was stuck. They're not. They need to do more background check on me. I'm very sketch.
Yeah.
So think about that. And global entry is $100 per person. Passports, it's a little over 100. I think it's been a while since I checked. So
yeah. Okay. And one thing I forgot to mention is, as other questions come up, feel free to use the Q&A little icon there at the bottom of the screen there to send questions, and we can ask those in real time.
Yep. All right. So we have our budget, but there's ways to save. So let's talk about a couple ways that you could save on your budget. You could consider the time of year that you're traveling. Maybe you could travel in the off season, and that's also pretty helpful. However, you're also going to want to check that things are open if you're wanting to travel then. So for example, when we go to Ireland, kids don't get off school till July. So a lot of those tourist things are not going to be open during the weekday if you don't go during that holiday time period. So you just need to think, okay, I'm going to have to do that on the weekend, and I'll do all my hiking during the week. If you go to Disney, you'll have to know that the hours are a lot shorter in the off season. So you would plan for that too.
Yeah.
So, but also it can save you thousands. I have a client going to Ireland, and we just moved their trip back just a tiny bit from middle of June to end of May, and it saved thousands in their airfare.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah, that's a big difference.
Okay.
Yeah,
it is a big difference. 3 days. We moved our Ireland trip 3 days this December, and it saved us 3,000. So you're just going to want to check.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then another thing to think about is booking your experiences in advance. A lot of times that saves you money, and you get a discount for purchasing online before you go. It also saves you time standing in line when you get there. And, you want to save as much time as possible on your trip. So you can also research free experiences or days that are free. A lot of European museums have free days open to the public. So go ahead and look into that, or days that are less expensive, like during the off time. So those are things to keep in mind. And then work with a travel agent. I mean, we know of discounts, we know the best times to go. And if we don't, we love to research those things. Also, you are always paying for a travel agent, even if you book yourself, because travel agent fees are built into hotels, to packages. That money goes somewhere. So it goes to, say you're going to Disney, that money will go to Disney. That money would go to Expedia. That money would go to a travel agent. So if you book by yourself, my boss says it's like paying for a service you're not using. So that's a thought. They can certainly help and love to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
one question came through. So it's around what are some maybe airline sites that kind of watch for decent airline deals? Like, what are some things that people should be some reputable sites to consider?
I actually have used Google Flights a lot, and that they will give you like that little graph that shows you the best time to book. And that's kind of where I tend to look. I also like to look in airlines that have that low fare calculator. So I kind of keep an eye on that too. I know there's some other ones, and I can look into that and send you some later. I can't get them off the top of my head, but those are where I tend to look first.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay. So we have talked about saving on our budget. So let's just talk about, now we've spent that money on our vacation. It's time to protect that vacation. Okay. So travel insurance, this I actually get quite a few questions on, like, when should I use it? Why should I use it? All of those things. So first of all, why should you use it? Your trip is an investment, and many times it can cost about the same amount as a car. You know what I mean? If you buy a car, you're protecting that. You're going to make sure it's insured in case anything happens, but you've spent the same amount on a trip. I think that's well worth protecting that. Some other reasons why is if you're abroad, your medical expenses, if you get sick, are going to be expensive, especially if you need to be evacuated from a country. If you're in a country with poor medical services, you're especially going to need it then, because your insurance will not cover you abroad. You're going to need to pay up front out of your wallet, and then you're going to need something to, pay you that back when you get back to the States. It also takes the stress out of inconveniences like delays, cancellations, lost luggage. This literally happened to us on our last trip. We had 2 flights. They weren't connected. So we had one flight taking us to Chicago and one to Ireland, and the Ireland one got cancelled. So we're like, oh, great. Now we're going to be just stuck in Chicago. And while we had that immediate stress of, oh, we need to find somewhere to stay and all that stuff, the second thought that came in was like, oh, I have trip insurance. This is great. Like, they're going to cover it. We are fine. We don't have to worry about that cost. So it just takes some of that stress out when it's taken care of. And then the State Department also recommends it because they can help you if you lose your passport. But if you lose your wallet, if you, something else like that happens, if you're sick, if you need to get home because someone is sick at home or passed away, they can't help you with any of that. So just know that in advance. They basically can help with those paperwork things, but that's about it. So when, I didn't put this on my slide, but I would especially recommend it for if you have something with connecting flights, anything that has moving parts, you're definitely going to want to make sure that's covered. If you're going on a cruise, if you do not make it to your port, that cruise is sailing away with your money. Taking your money and sailing away, because you've already paid for that, and they're going to say, if you're not here, too bad, so sad. Those are my 2 that I would definitely, or if you're going somewhere with medical places that are, kind of not up to what there would be here in the States.
And we had a question come in on travel insurance. So what's the typical premium amount for trip insurance?
So generally it's going to be between 5% and 10% is what I see the most of your trip cost. However, it depends. If you only have like one little flight and that's about it, it's going to be way, way less than that. If you have a pre-existing condition, it might be more than that. If it's a cruise, it might be a little bit more. It just depends how many things can go wrong that's what they're going to take into
Yeah.
account. And the other thing, especially with pre-existing conditions, it depends on state, but the sooner you book it after you make your deposit, so some states it's 15 days and some give you 21, that you will get more coverage
Oh,
if you purchase it sooner. So a lot of times it will cover pre-existing conditions both for you and for the people at home. So if you have a parent who has a pre-existing heart condition, has a heart attack while you're away, okay, you're covered for that. Well, if you wait, the closer you get to your travel date, that might not be the case.
oh, I did not realize
So,
that. So have that on the radar as soon as you get things booked to get going on getting that in place.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we've had our budget, we've got our insurance. Let's just talk about a couple things to do before you leave to make sure that you are safe. Information wise, you're going to want to take your passports, your visas, your insurance details, credit card numbers, and a phone number to call just in case something happens with that. Your booking reference numbers, travel agent, insurance, all of those important documents and numbers and people that you're going to need to call, you're going to want to have a picture of, and then you're going to want to put it somewhere in the cloud. Somewhere that if your phone gets stolen or broken, you're going to be able to reach all of those things. Make sure it's password protected. Also, it's probably a good idea to have it printed and then somewhere, a different case than the one you're taking on board. So you're going to want to make sure that you have backups for all of those things. If something happens and you lose any of those things, make sure it's in the cloud where you could go to the business center at a hotel and be able to access those.
Yeah.
So that's just a simple thing to do before you leave. Okay, let's keep going. So you're there, you're safe. Let's talk about using your phones abroad, because this can be an expense that people aren't prepared for if they turn on that roaming when they get there and then they come home to a big bill.
Right.
So there's a couple of things that you can consider when you're going abroad. Check with your provider's international plans. So a lot of them have monthly or daily. So if you're just going for a short trip, for example, AT&T is what we use, and theirs is a $10 daily fee, which is not too bad if you're just going for a little while. You'll be able to access the data and all of that stuff. Or if you're planning on being there for a while, you can call and ask about their monthly plans.
Okay. And on the daily or monthly, is that whatever your plan is in the US, you get that same level, or is it?
It is their specific international plan. So, and each carrier is a little different. So I would suggest calling and asking what's best for your specific trip. This is what we do. We tend to use Wi-Fi only when we go places. So we put on the airplane mode and it does not come off basically for our whole trip. And that is because we are usually staying in just one location that has reliable internet. So we, when we're out doing things, we don't want work to be able to reach us. No offense, Derek. So we don't mind that our phone's not turned on.
Right.
We need our phone for pictures, and that's about it, And so then we get home, we'll answer the calls, we'll answer the texts. But when we're out doing things, I don't really want that. Make sure though that you have Wi-Fi enabled calls turned on in your phone settings, or you will not be getting any phone calls. So that works for both Android and Apple. And then the best new update that they've given is they have downloadable maps. So now you can download a map for an entire region of where you're staying, and it will work just as if you had cell service.
Oh, that is
it gives
fantastic.
you turn-by-turn directions. It gives you, if you go off course, it will correct you. It kind of gives you your time, but it was a little off. But it will correct as you go. So all those things are just on a Wi-Fi only and cost you nothing. And it's also good to know in our mind that if something did happen and we turned on our phone, it's $10 for that day. So that's kind of our backup plan for that. If you're planning on being gone for a long time and you need a local phone number, there are two choices. You could use an eSIM card on your phone, which is, instead of having that little card that you slot in, they have an e version of that you can download. You have to make sure that your phone is unlocked. So generally that means your phone needs to be paid off and you need to call your provider and say, can you unlock my phone? The other option is just to buy a local burner phone. That sounds like I'm a spy. The pay as you go phones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's to just get one of those. So you'll have a local number if you need to be in touch with people in that country.
Okay.
So those are kind of two longer term options. Okay. Now let's talk about paying for things while we're over there. How to pay, what are the best ways to pay for things when you're abroad? So this is kind of I don't know if you really need to do this anymore, but it's always advised to give notice to your bank or credit card so they don't think someone's stolen your identity. But I don't think they do much with it anymore, but it can't hurt.
Yeah.
So that's just something to put on your list.
Yeah.
And then we tend to use cards the most when we travel because they're secure. And then you can always cancel them if something goes wrong, but you're going to want to make sure that it has no international fees. So check with your bank, maybe go ahead and apply for one if you don't have one, or that at minimum. There's some with like don't have very many, and it might be worth the points to you to, if you're a point collector, to take on those few little fees. You can order cash from your bank ahead of time. So there's quite a few countries that you'll need cash for some things. And so that usually doesn't take long if you have a brick and mortar place that you can go, like it can turn around in as quickly as a day. So
nice.
You can order some ahead. I wouldn't advise getting too much ahead of time because you just don't want to you're going to look like a tourist wherever you go. So you don't want to be, hello, pickpockets, I'm over here.
Right.
Just enough to get you through a couple days.
Yeah.
Get some coffee or whatever, tip someone. Then when we're abroad, we really like to use tap to pay. So if you have a tap to pay card, Apple Watch or Samsung or Google Pay or on your phone, it's a very secure way to pay for things. If you're using your card, you can use it to pay for things under €50 in Europe. And then anything over, you'd have to put it in. Or if you use Apple Pay or your phone to pay for things, that works for more than that. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Then when you're paying, the what are they called? The little places that you tap are very helpful and will say to you, would you like us to charge you in dollars? And the first time we saw this, we were like, yes, we'll know exactly how much we're spending. You're so helpful. But they are not so helpful. They are going to give you a much higher exchange rate than your bank will. So always choose local currency when you're paying abroad and let your bank take care of that exchange rate for you. The shops are not being helpful.
Yeah. I did not realize that. Yeah, that's a good tip.
Yes. And then when we use the ATMs to get the more cash that we need while we're there, they also try to be very helpful by giving you a guaranteed exchange rate. You don't want to rely on that fluctuating market. We'll give you a rate that you'll know what you're getting.
Yeah.
You'll know what you're getting ripped off is what you'll be getting. So their exchange rate is guaranteed too high. Yeah. So let your bank take care of that for you and it will be fine. And then if you're going somewhere touristy, that's I'm trying to think like a developing nation or somewhere like that, make sure that you're using kind of a trusted international branch. There's a lot of commission scams out there where they'll say no fees, but then you check your bank and it's like, oh, $50 commission.
Okay. So, yeah.
Just make sure it's a recognized branch of something. So you can Google that before you go. What are the biggest banks in such and such country? And then keep that in mind.
Yeah.
When you're traveling.
Yeah.
Okay. And I keep on going. Okay, so here is a way to get some money back at the end of your vacation. So especially Europe, but there are other countries that do this. You can claim your VAT back, which is your value added tax. So in Europe, we just combine all of that tax into the cost of whatever you're buying. So there's no like here, I'm buying a $1 candy bar and it's 20 cents tax. So now it's $1.20. You just see the full final price and that's what you pay, which was very embarrassing for young Karen when she came to the States and never had enough money because I didn't know that you had to account for tax. So when you're going there, it'll all be there, but you can get some of it back. So here are some things you can and can't use it for. You cannot claim your hotel or your meals back unless you are a business, in which case you may be able to. So if you're traveling for business and you're doing it a lot, that's something to look into. And that was my job when I was a teenager, was to help companies get their VAT back. You can use it for merchandise, but a lot of times you have to spend over a specific amount in one place. So if I want to buy a $300 Waterford crystal, whatchamacallit, I can get VAT back on that. So Ireland, the rate was 50 the last time I checked. You have to spend over 50 in one place. Then don't use your merchandise. Don't wear your fancy new jacket that you bought. So it works if it's a gift or if you're planning on wearing it later, but if you're wearing it home, they might not let you take your VAT back on that. So the different countries use different methods. Ireland has a little handy card that you swipe at the shop and then you swipe at the airport and you're all set. I have a client going to Australia. They have an app that you can use for that. And so every country is just a little bit different with how you can get your tax back. So it might not be worth it if you're not planning on spending a ton on high-end items, but if that's in your mind, it might be something to think about, because Ireland's VAT rate is like 21%. So it's a significant chunk if you're spending a lot. Check and in advance of when you go, where at the airport to go, so you're not wasting your airport time and missing a flight for, $20. So just make sure you know where it is and have your receipts ready. So that's claiming some VAT back. Okay, then know your rights. So this is kind of our last tip here. Be familiar with your airline's terms of service for your delays, for your lost luggage, and for cancellation. They're not going to volunteer to give you things if they bump you from a flight or if your flight is delayed. They're going to do the minimum, but a lot of them have terms and services that, like, you could get some points back, you could get some cash back, you could get, meals. So if you're delayed for more than 3 hours, they're entitled. They have to provide you with a meal. So you can check transportation.gov has a list of all the airlines and what they owe you if something happens to your luggage, if you're delayed, if you're canceled, if you're bumped off a flight, especially if you're bumped off a flight, they will owe you, I think, up to 400% of your flight's worth. So it's good to have that just kind of downloaded on your phone in the background, what you need. For traveling to Europe, this is the EU regulation on here that I have up there. And we used this on our last trip when our flight was canceled. And we got reimbursed for our hotel, our meals. I will say not all of our meals, because we did go out to eat and order a lot of food. It was a buffet. And we were like, I know they won't cover probably all of this, but we're going to eat well on the airline. So meals and hotels and transportation to and from the airport. And on top of that, they owed us over $600 per person for canceling our flight. So, but they are not just going to give that to you. You will need to know what those rules are, and then you're going to need to go ask for it. So a lot of times it's a form on their website, call in, know when you need to ask. If you don't know, they're not volunteering. So, and then my last tip is a bonus tip that I just learned last month, and that is the 20-minute baggage rule. So Delta and Alaska Airlines have a rule that once you have once you are up at the terminal and that door is open, you start a timer and your baggage has to be out in 20 minutes or they will give you points towards your next flight. So if you are a points collector for Delta or Alaska, keep that in mind, because I just read about a guy who was able to take a couple trips because they were never out on time. Again, if you don't know those things, no one is volunteering that, but they're there for you to take advantage of. So then if you have any questions or anything specific to travel you are taking, I have gone ahead and put my contact information here. Karen@magicmousetravel.com. There is my phone number. Then if you ever want to follow our adventures or tips, I will put more of these kind of travel tips, or just videos of when we're in Ireland, or ideas for places to go, or deals that I find. I will put them on my Facebook or Instagram, so you're welcome to follow and make sure those dots are in there, or you'll be following a video game called Kings and Castles. If you like video
Yes.
games, follow
Yeah.
them too.
Follow both, I guess. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So any
Awesome.
questions that we need to answer? Are we
Yes, yes,
feeling
there
good
are some
here?
questions here. So, back on travel insurance,
Mhm.
the question is, should you shop around for travel insurance? What companies are kind of like the State Farms of travel insurance or whatnot? Like, what are some of the reputable ones to look at, or is it just
Mhm.
pretty much a wide open game there?
I have gotten some differing, a lot of the coverage is going to be the same. So
Yep.
I think it is fair to shop around. I always suggest checking with your travel advisor, wink, wink. But also some of the ones that I tend to use, I like Chubb a lot.
Okay.
We've used Allianz in the past, Travel Insured. There's a couple of really nice ones out there. You can check with maybe whatever your home or car insurance is. They might also offer it at a
Oh,
discount
nice.
if you're already a customer. Those are places that I would look.
Yeah. And then around local currency. So, do you have a recommendation for how much local currency to take?
Oh, it would honestly depend on where you're going and
Yeah.
how much access they have to like credit card machines. Like if you're going to Europe, I wouldn't say you would need a ton of euro to get you started, especially because tipping, that's another thing that we could consider. Like tipping isn't a huge deal. You're not going to need to be giving 20%. It's like a euro here, a euro there just to say thanks, but it's not expected to be the same amount
Okay.
in most of the world actually.
Yeah.
So you're not going to need that much cash, I don't think. But if you're going somewhere where it's not as developed, it doesn't have pay points in every store, then you might consider a bit more. You'll just have to be careful when you
Yeah.
carry it over. So.
Yeah. And could you like walk us through? So my wife and I, we have two little kids. We're gonna have a Disney trip at some point. So let's just use this
Mhm.
as an example. And we say, hey, Karen, Derek and Tracy are wanting to do Disneyland. I've never done Disneyland. And so could you help us out with that? Kind of walk us through what that process would look like working with you on putting a trip together.
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I always say is tell me your budget because my husband is a financial planner and that's important to us. So I always ask, tell me your budget first. And then from there, we can kind of start looking at times of year that fit your budget best.
Okay.
And then we start looking at accommodations. Do you want to stay on site? There's some perks, but you're going to pay for those perks. And then there's different levels in there. Like how much deluxe feeling do you like? Or are you happy to never be at your hotel and then, just pay for a bed,
Mhm.
So you have all those things. So we'll look through all those. We'll look through how small your kids are. Like how long could they possibly be in a park for? We don't want to be standing in line. So we're going to want to pay for that, skip the line service, or we're going to want to make a strategy to help you hit the parks at this time. Make sure you're taking a nap going back. So we kind of try and keep every family in mind. Do you have teenagers? They're just going to run all day. So we can, plan differently for a teenager than I would with little kids. What attractions would they like the best? We make a list. We kind of talk through all that. That's kind of general idea of, so we'll do budget, we'll do time, we'll do accommodations, and then we'll do how do we make those parks fit for your family so you're not exhausted and burnt out. Now, I burn my family out quite regularly because I'm a goer, but I'm getting better.
Yeah, it's good to have both on a trip there for sure.
Yeah.
And so what what usually happens say we're on this trip and we run into a snag somewhere, like is there support, do travel agents support during the trip, and then is there a follow, what's the like after trip interaction with travel agent?
Yes, and that I think is one of the biggest benefits to booking with a travel agent is that you have help throughout your trip if something goes wrong. Now, there's like limitations. I literally, one of my fellow agents had somebody text them from a cruise ship to say, "Where is the iron?" We're not going to help you find an iron. We're going to say, go talk to, the people at the service
Yeah,
desk and ask them where
yeah,
to find an iron. But
yeah,
if I had a family one time and I noticed their pictures weren't coming up and we paid especially for those pictures. Why can't we see them? And so I spent a lovely afternoon talking to their PhotoPass guy on the phone, telling them, here's what they're wearing, here's what time they rode those rides. And we got all of those pictures up
Oh,
on our
nice.
phone while they were on their trip. And it was super fun because I was like stalking them on the rides, like, oh, I see you.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're so happy to help with things like that that would kind of take away from your trip while you're there. So
Gotcha.
within reason,
Yeah.
yes, travel agents help you while you're on their trip. And then at the end, of course, we're going to check, did you have a good time? Could I have done anything better? Like, help us out. So
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's been super helpful. Just a lot of stuff that wasn't even on my radar. One thing that I thought of too is, and hopefully this is never needed, but if you're taking a long trip overseas or a cruise or whatnot, making sure like your estate plan, I'm going to kind of nerd out a little bit, but making sure your estate plan is up and running and it has the proper people in place to serve your needs. And so, for some that might be, oh, you need to get on that and get something in place. Others, it might just be a quick review, or maybe you just need to do have a power of attorney document drafted real quick, either for a specific need or just kind of cover some general things, both financial and healthcare. But those are some other things to think about and do it ahead of time. That way you can enjoy your trip and you kind of cover, kind of like that trip insurance there,
Right.
with the medical and all that. It's like you covered your bases a lot to just kind of free yourself to have fun and make a lot of memories there. So
Yeah, I would definitely say that I have thought about that on particularly bumpy flights. Don't wait till
yes,
you're on a really bumpy flight to go, did I do
right,
everything? I know I
right,
have. I just going
yeah.
through my mind like, oh, what would these people get if this
Yeah,
thing
check your
crashed? Oh,
beneficiaries, make sure your estate plan's in place before you get on any bumpy flights there. Yeah,
yep.
for sure. Awesome. Well, Karen, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to help us and provide really a lot of great tips and tricks. For those of you on the call here, we're going to have a follow-up email with the recording and then a lot of other information there. So stay tuned for that follow-up email, and we'll get that out to you guys here shortly. So, Karen, thank you so
Awesome.
much. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Bye.